Good afternoon. Such a pleasure to see you all here, all bright and awake at 3 o'clock when regular people get droopy. So it is my pleasure to introduce Jeff Stanford. I'm actually staying at his unbelievable Stanford Inn in Mendocino. Oh my gosh, when they made heaven, they made a suburb, and it's the Stanford Inn. I'm just so grateful to be there.
I'm buying the tape.
I also learned that Jeff comes from my hometown of Kansas City, Missouri. So you see, we can get vegans out of the Midwest. Jeff is an ethical vegan who believes that mindfulness in the kitchen is key to personal growth. In the kitchen, each of us has the power to create change through intentionality. As a dowser, Jeff works with human energy systems. He is an ordained minister in the Universal Church of the Master. When he and wife Joan opened Stanford Inn by the Sea, they adopted green practices, including sustainable organics, composting, and eco-building materials. Their vegetarian restaurant, The Ravens, opened in 1996. And the talk that we'll be hearing today is Consciousness and Diet. Choosing veganism is a manifestation of an essential aspect of human life, choice. It means that we have brought attention and intelligence to life. This choice is both joyous and revelatory. I welcome with great pride and honor Jeff Stanford.
Thank you, Victoria. Well, I'm not here to sell the inn, a book, or anything at all. I'm just here to talk about how my wife and I live, basically, because it's been a very interesting process. To tell you how far I've come, it's not quite as far as Howard Lyman, but my family was in the cattle business, and I grew up thinking I was going to be in the cattle business, or a businessman, or something. I actually got into anthropology, and I got into my research area was the human potential movement. The guy that started it is a man named Jack Schwartz. He started a company called Alethea in 1958. And everything, EST, all the things that you go on, biofeedback, brain waves, all that was all based on Jack's body, or in Jack's body of work. And only reason I'm mentioning that he was my mentor, and he moved here in 1996. He died here in 2000, and but he moved his whole program here. It was called Alethea, which was the one he started in 1958. He was a Dutch citizen. He did weird things. He could put needles through him and sit on a bed of nails. The nails, though, being about 6 inches apart. So then somebody 250 pounds would go on there. Would sit on it, would stand on him, and sometimes they break pieces of concrete over his stomach, and he'd just get off of it, and there would be no damage to his body. And the last time he did that, he did it on the Mike Douglas show, and then he decided that it wasn't changing people. He wrote a book in 1980. I was vegetarian already when that happened, but he wrote a book in 1988 called "It's Not What You Eat, But What Eats You." So here we are at a vegan raw food exposition, and I actually don't believe that it matters really what you eat, but how you deal with what you eat. And I call that mindfulness. I looked up mindfulness in the dictionary online in a bunch of different places, and I really couldn't find an adequate definition. Mindfulness is knowing. So first of all, what I want to talk about is that using mindfulness in the kitchen, to me, is where to begin if you want to have an informed life. It's easier to do it that way because you've got to eat several times a day, and you make decisions several times a day, and decisions are the result of consciousness. You're always making a decision. As far as I'm concerned, you decided on your parents, you decided on the life you're living, and you don't know that. And if you examine your life thoroughly, you'll find out that, if you go deeply into this, you'll find out that you've made the choices, and that the easiest way to deal with them, even though you're in conflict with yourself, is to embrace the choices, which is pretty much the concept of joy in Chinese, in the language, Chinese language. I'm sorry, so many people are sitting down. I'll stop for a second. Okay, so the idea, I think I didn't know much about the raw food movement until actually we got involved with Sherry and Dan, and I'm enamored with it. I think it's wonderful, and I went to, this is the first expo I've been to. I was at the plenary session a few days ago on Thursday night, and I saw some of the younger people that are traveling around the country talking about their raw lifestyle or vegan lifestyle, and they're absolutely glowing. And the reason I feel that they're glowing in part is not just the food, but that they made a choice, and they look at that choice, and every time they encounter food or food choices, they're always living their choice. And that's how my experience is, so that it brings mindfulness in there. Now, to complicate things, my father gave me a book by Krishnamurti and when I was 18 years old. I'm not going to tell you what year that was, because I don't remember. And and Krishnamurti was amazing, and what he identified as the problems with being human is that we're in conflict all the time, and that one of the things you have to do is to get rid of conflict. And you don't run around and say, in the war, you got to end the conflict within yourself. That was his approach. And where I think that most of us are in conflict, the thing that we hide from most, it's so primary, is we hide from the fact that we're living on a predatory planet and we're eating animals, most of us, if not in this room, but most of our society, they eat dogs in China and Korea. They eat puppies. You know, and I tell people that, and they go, oh my God, how can they do that? And then they go eat a cow. I don't know what the hell the difference is. But anyway, the realization or the consciousness is that if you're doing that and you have a problem with it, you're petting your dog while you're eating your steak, then you're in conflict. And the more that you look at that and the more that you act on your knowledge, the more aware you can become. Not only the more aware you become, the more vibrant you become, because you're starting to eliminate conflict in your life, and you do it in an essential place, right in your kitchen, right in the restaurants when you're making a decision and you're trying to explain to a waitress what vegan is, which I have to do a lot. So it's, to me, the most important thing that you can do is to change in your kitchen. And so what I'm really talking about, so there's a couple things. I can go on a philosophical basis with you, if you like, or I can talk about how we actually manifest that in the world with the in. And I think there was a big response to that at the plenary session when I said that what we do is model. So let me ask you a question, because I don't know quite where to go with this conversation. How many of you are vegan? Wow. And how many are you exclusive raw food? Okay, that's a large proportion. That's good. So I'm not going to tell you, because I think many of you are living what I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk about how we practice that in the real world and convert people. And as I said at the plenary session, for those of you who attended it, that day somebody was writing me a note when I came into work. I work late at night, so I was coming in at 10. She was writing me this note, and she's an MS. She's afflicted with MS, to put it that way. And what she told me was that she was going to be vegan for the rest of her life. She drinks a lot of dairy and stuff, and it's really the antithesis of what you should do if you have MS. So she's doing it to save her life. But she also kind of got high at the end. We're lucky. We sit on a ley line. Do you guys know what a ley line is? Some of you do. I saw you're shaking your head yet. A ley line was identified by Druids as earth energy moving through the land. And so they put Stonehenge is on a ley line. All the I don't know how to say it, the sacred sites that I have ever been to in Hawaii are on ley lines. It's just earth energy line. This is more concentration of earth energy. Do you guys believe or understand that we have meridians and energy flowing around us? It's the same for the planet's body. And there's one of those, there are a lot of them, one just happens to run through the property that we're on. And so when we decided that the world needed to be changed, we didn't write a book, which we might have done. We decided to model it, and we created a vegetarian restaurant. And then what we tried to do is to get our staff on board. Boy, no, that didn't work. To get them to at least understand what it is that we do. But the only way that we found that it works is to be joyful. And what we find is that, first of all, you don't lose staff. Second of all, the guests kind of change. They kind of pick up on that energy. And we've got much more of a vegan staff than we've ever had before. It's just been happening. So the idea is that through the mindfulness that we practice in our kitchen, and Barry just presented, and did you attend the raw? Any of you attend the raw breakfast special, the vegan scramble? He's pretty mindful. He's just 31 or he'll be 32 in October, and he came to us. This is a totally perfect example. He came to us an alcoholic and into drugs to some degree. I don't know to what extent because it was hidden from me. He would leave the inn every day and go to Patterson's and have chicken wings, whatever they have there. I've never been there. And so on. And he has been for a long time, several years now, vegan and totally clean, no alcohol, drugs, hardly any coffee. All of that, I think, comes from just doing what you do without being a huge advocate for it. I mean, in other words, without berating people for the fact that they eat meat or something like that. They change. You create an energy around yourself that draws people in, and subtly things happen to them. And it's amazing, and they think that we're charismatic, or that now that Barry's charismatic, or that Sid, who is a vegan, he runs our dining room, is charismatic. Nobody's charismatic. It just happens. It just happens by living your truth and expressing it. And that truth, when it's right, you can feel it in your body. And as far as I'm concerned, the reason to be vegan and probably to be raw is because your body responds more to your higher self. I don't know if I should do this way, but do any of you know how does your higher self talk to you? You guys know? Have any concept? Well, probably all of you do. It talks to you by how you feel in your body, because it talks to the body self. It doesn't talk to the ego self. It's too busy talking. And so as a result of that, your body's got to be alive, and you got to be able to feel what's going on in it. And when that starts happening, then that affects other people, that energy flow. I actually normally would go ahead and I've never done a raw food thing before. So what I'd like to do is perhaps I will. Will Tuttle's here. He wrote the book. That's very important. So if you haven't read it, you should all read it, and that is World Peace Diet. Anyway, the concept that I have is that we're all alone, and that it's a remarkable aloneness that we have in the universe. And because what I want to ask you is, can you imagine this is the circle of your own consciousness, and can you imagine anything outside of that consciousness that you could be conscious of? Is there anything, can any of you help me with this? Is there anything that you can imagine that's outside of your own consciousness? No. There isn't anything that can be out of consciousness. So I'm talking to you. Where am I? I'm in your consciousness. So that's really important. It's about taking responsibility. It's no longer your parents' fault or whatever your condition is. It's always within yourself, and that's where mindfulness comes in, to see and capture the decisions that you're making. And you start in the kitchen. I like this symbol, of course, for consciousness, which I'm not very good as an artist, but this side being what's known, the objective, and this side being the subjective. And of course, to know anything, it's binary. So it's all one system, but you never can get out of it. And my whole goal in life is to try and know this circle as much as possible, just the process of it and everything else that's going on. And the only possible way to do that is to stay mindful about the decisions I'm making every minute, every day, and the choices I'm making, and then not to try to invade other people's circles. First of all, it's not possible, but it's really important to not push on them so that they kind of resonate with you. So that's when this S curve is is the same in two people. Gee, it's 15 minutes. I'm not well prepared. Well, so I was the point that I'm trying to make, and I think I'll go to questions right away, is that did any of you own businesses? And do any of you try to do them vegan or Whole Foods or any of that? What kind of businesses are they?
Tree trimming and logging.
Whoa. No, that's okay. It can be done well. It can be done well. But I didn't expect that answer.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, you're here. That's an excellent thing.
Raw food classes, but
No, it's excellent that you're here. I mean, the whole thing that we're about is modeling, and I don't know how to really talk about it except that we model it every day. I mean, our gardens, have any of you been to the inn besides? Oh, several of you have. I mean, everything we do is to model behavior in relationship to the planet, and we do it on the basis of understanding that it's not outside of us. So anything that we push on or damage harms us. And that, and the more sensitive we become as individuals, because it's all about being individual, the more you become aware of how you're pushing on yourself and damaging yourself. And the whole issue about dealing with conflict and looking at it very closely in your lives is to keep it from projecting outward. So if you've got conflict going on, and you're hiding from it, then it's so much easier to support conflict going elsewhere, on a societal level, to not object to what's going on in Afghanistan. We just had a murder-suicide here by a kid, Jake, who was in, this is in Fort Bragg, who was in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and he had PTS, and nobody treated him. And then the fact is that conflict in our hearts is conflict outside, and we can accept it. And when we talk to some of our guests that say, where do you get your protein and stuff like that, we say, well, that's not the question. And it's really about, why are you asking me that? And that's because they don't want to change their diet. And they've got but they have a conflict about it, so they want to have a reason. They want to have a have to. I have to eat this. So actually that I can maintain my habits in my life as I know it. Any of you read Castaneda? Well, there was a character in it named Don Hanaro, and he talked about controlled folly and spinning the world, and so did Don Juan. I mean, that's really what we're doing. If once you tell somebody what you're doing is wrong, you're eating animals or whatever you tell them, however you tell them, then all of a sudden their world isn't spun the same way, and they're having a real problem holding on to it. And they have to look at it. So it's not good to tell them that way. They get very defensive. I had two girls walk into the inn, friends of a vegan kid that grew up at the inn. He's 28 now. So this just happened in the winter. And they came in. They were all full of themselves. They said, "Oh, we do this sustainable work in Tahoe on water and in someplace in Asia." And I said, "Oh, good." And they said, "We're really into sustainability." And I said, "Oh, good, you're vegan." And they said, "Oh no, there's got to be another way. There's got to be a middle way." They immediately got defensive, And for all the work that they're doing, the animals that they eat and the water pollution and so on and so forth, they're undoing it because they're not living it. There was Greenpeace, just to give you an example of how this works. This was yesterday. Greenpeace is out in front of a mall in Orange County, and they're trying to get people to sign to stop fishing off the California coast, some petition. And so Sid Hillman, who is the maitre d' and runs the dining room, he went up to them. He's also an actor. He was down there looking for auditions. And he went up to them and said, "Oh, good, you're against fishing. You must be vegan then." And they, no, we're vegetarian, but we eat fish. You know, and Sid was clever. We talked about it because Sid used to get angry about these kinds of things. So we talked about it, and he followed that kind of thing. He did not push back, but because he just kind of looked, which he's very good at because he's a character actor, he just looked kind of amazed. And they talked to him about it and said, well, I guess we better get off of fish. You know. So to me, it's all about modeling it and to be joyful about it. And I know we don't have a lot of time. I don't know what else to go on to about, so I'm going to let you ask me questions. Yeah?
You were looking for an answer, yes, and I have a business and 10 employees.
Yeah?
Is that kind of your question? Do any of you have businesses?
Yes, my question is this, can you do the businesses in a sustainable way? And as if it's logging, it's going to be a difficult answer, except that, you know, you replant and so on. You know, there's ways to do it. And logging can be done sustainably. So I'm not here to argue about logging.
So let's say I'm a general contractor and I deal with building, or not building, but fixing old houses.
Yes.
And I have a crew of guys that love hamburgers and smoke cigarettes.
Okay, well, that happened to us, too. We were building, and this guy went and bought a chicken at Mendoza's at that time, which had chickens that they did on a rotisserie, and he threw it up against this carcass. He ate this thing. He was a big man. And he threw it up against the foundation to be buried back in there, but in the meantime, just to rot there. That ended because I said, I can make all kinds of decisions as an employer. It was an owner-built job. And one of the decisions I can make is whether or not to hire people that are eating meat or whatever. I can't do it on race, religion, and all anything like that. And I said, please don't eat that here, and never again. And they didn't do it anymore. I just said, I don't do it here. And smoking is not allowed on our property. But that took a while to get. I've owned it for 29 years. It took a while to get rid of it. First, I had to quit smoking. And then I had to get my employees to stop smoking. But it's always better to do it first yourself. Yeah. Any other questions? I like the questions. I'm good at answering. I'll make up anything. Oh, and by the way, I have the newsletter that we give to guests here, and I'm going to give you all one if you're interested in it. What's important is that it has 20 reasons to be vegan in it, and it's all summarized and it's all real clear, and it's very straight. You know, like nationally, there's roughly 20%. Globally, there's 20%. Did my voice go away? I didn't hear the echo anymore. The 20% to 28% of all global warming is a result of meat production and puppy production. I like saying that so that people get on it. I have too many people that come with dogs to the inn and they have to go someplace for their steak. Yes?
I shouldn't be eating cheese and eggs and butter.
No. I unfortunately serve no cheese, no butter, but I do serve eggs as an option in the morning. Otherwise, I'd lose all my guests. I'd like to not do that anymore. But we feel that it's a rationalization. It's totally a rationalization. We call ourselves a nexus for change. But at least some people get there and they get the message that they may not come otherwise because their children won't come. There's no food for us. Or they're, for breakfast. And we were vegan always anyway. Not vegan, we were vegetarian. And then going vegan for breakfast isn't hard. There's some great stuff.
It's really easy.
Yeah, it's really easy. Yes?
Well, you have a wonderful menu, and I was just curious, with a lot of choices that aren't with the egg, what's the percentage of people that come in that do choose that have?
Unfortunately, like we have the Ravens Portobello, which our English muffins don't have egg. Nothing has none of the basics. And we have a lemon tahini sauce instead of a hollandaise sauce. Most of the non-vegans will order it with eggs. But we don't do very many eggs. I mean, it's remarkable because a lot of people order our waffles and pancakes. They're vegan. So it really works well. And it took, I had to push against my staff because I have a largely Hispanic staff. And some of them are getting it. But it's been very difficult. Any other questions? Yeah?
So your journey to actually build an inn or create the inn as a mom, did this ever occur to you it might be a crazy idea and that it might not work? And if it did, how did you cross that bridge?
Okay, well, when you're a bed and breakfast inn, you can be vegetarian without any trouble. You could actually be vegan because nobody would know the difference. I wasn't vegan at the time, I was vegetarian. So it wasn't an issue. But as I became more passionate about it and wanted to do sustainable building, to do everything sustainably, I simply did it. And if it didn't work, we'd close the restaurant, to be honest. And right now, the restaurant's carried by the inn. So it isn't, you know, when I read in that book, magazine, we just don't the green magazine or whatever that came with your packets, and somebody opened a raw restaurant. The fact of the matter is, we just do not have the population to even support a vegan restaurant up here. And if it wasn't for visitors, there wouldn't be one. I can tell you, because there's no point of it. People in Mendocino Fort Bragg are a hell of a lot less conscious than they pretend to be. I'm being honest. You know, first of all, they spend a lot of time in Central America after they've sold their harvest. We got a lot of growers here. Anyway, and who knows what they eat. And I can tell you that our business went way, but a lot of them try to eat well, and but our business went way down after the fires burnt them out last summer, to be honest. Any other questions? You're really good for, yeah.
Now, your high season is which season? The summer is
the high season.
Your low season.
The high season for the inn is generally every major holiday, particularly Christmas and Thanksgiving, and July and August, and early September. It used to be from May, the beginning of May, through the end of October. It is now pretty much July, August, September, and the first 2 weeks of October, and that's the end of the high season. So they should have done this when it's not the high season, so you guys could get really great rates in the whole area.
So in the winter up here, do you have a lot of snow?
Oh no, we haven't had snow since 1989. It snowed in Los Angeles in 1989. It was one whopping Alaskan front.
But it gets cold in the winter.
It's cold in summer.
No, it's colder in the summer usually. We had, this January and February, we had a lot of 80-degree days. And I never have 80-degree days in the summer at the inn. And I would be sitting outside talking to my kids who are in New York and Chicago, freezing, and I'm saying it's 80 degrees here. It was wonderful. No, we don't have that kind of weather. I don't think it snows on the coast until you get close to Vancouver.
You get sunshine in the winter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unless it's raining and there's storms. There's no fog like you have at this time of the year.
Oh, no fog in the winter.
No, very rare. No, it rains.
So the rates are a little bit less.
They're a lot less in the winter.
Okay.
But I'm not trying to sell the inn. Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, I was trying to get you into another space in terms of courage to act on the convictions as a business owner. And actually, because in a way you're pushing this off into the way you're building and the way you're serving people, staff hiring. And I mean, people have either been in businesses or work for businesses, most of us.
Yeah.
How do you take on that question? I mean, just doing it sounds pretty bold, but it sounds like you've also worked your way up into some of these things. Can you maybe share some of your path with us?
Well, I mean, you know, if it's not an ethical choice, then we make the choice to do the most ethical thing that's available to us. So, you know, and we're very conscious of any compromise that we make. I can tell you specifically where the hypocrisy is and where the compromise is, because we know where we made it. That's consciousness. And we always are reconsidering, and we're always talking about it and thinking about it. We're always talking about the eggs in the morning, to be honest. Always. It's a very deep concern for me. I have all kinds of problems. I don't know if it's any worse to hit the moth on the windshield than a deer with the hood and bumper of your car. I don't really know which life is more valuable. I have no idea. I just value all life. The reason why we do what we do is because of the value of life. We feel that the experience that we're here to experience, and one of the things we need to know is that we're making choices, and we feel that as human beings, that we have that capacity to know that we're making choices. Not so much a dog. But that they're here to experience too. I don't want to destroy their experience. I don't want to get in the way of their experience. I would rather take leaves off a plant and let it bolt, and we do that a lot in our gardens, rather than just take the whole head as lettuce or cabbage. Sometimes we do it with cabbage. So we really try to let beans express themselves, to go and fully express themselves, to flower and seed. I have a problem eating sprouts. I have no problem eating seeds because that hasn't germinated yet. That bit of life and experience, the experiencing entity hasn't generated. But plants, if you study plants, they're constantly experiencing and ingesting their life, and they have a remarkable intelligence. It's just not a human intelligence. So we don't deeply appreciate it, but you should get into it. It's deeply appreciable. I mean, something you can really get into.
Your seeds that you're eating, are you soaking them, but they're just not germinated yet, or are you just eating?
Well, mostly we don't. I don't soak seeds. Now, on the almonds, we soak them. But almonds are pre-sterilized somehow now in California anyway. They're dead. They're not a real, truly alive food anymore, I don't think. But they're alive enough. And we soak them, and then and the sunflower seeds, and then we'll grind them up and make that breakfast special. Yeah?
So have you ever tried not to have the eggs in the morning at your restaurant?
Yes.
And your business actually did go down?
I haven't, yeah. Well, no. We tried it, and people didn't like it, and we didn't let it get that far. I mean, my occupancy was 78% in '94, and it's down in the 40s now. Yes. So I want you to know that there's an impact. And we're brave, courageous, but frankly, I would be stomping on my beliefs, and that's even worse and more painful than losing money or to have to close the restaurant. I will not do that. I've already compromised. I'm at the level of compromise that I'm going to do. But at least it's conscious, and everybody that's involved in that process is conscious of it and aware of it. We're all in it together. My staff, and they're wonderful people. And many of the top staff are vegan now, almost all of them. And it's not because I insisted, although I'm wondering if I should. You're going to ask me something?
Are there other inns like yours that are successfully vegan in other places?
Well, the only ones I know are small bed and breakfast, and I think you told me about the one in Florida on the Keys. I've heard of that one, and there is one in New England someplace. And there's a vegan restaurant, not raw, up in, I think, Vancouver Island. I met the owner. She came through here with her son.
It's amazing, right? 300 million people in the United States, and there's only one or two inns
That are vegan.
that are vegan.
Yeah, it's very hard, but we have
Yeah, it's astonishing.
What did you say?
I said they should force a vacuum. We've got to fill that vacuum.
We're trying to fill it.
We gotta educate.
Yes?
Would you feel less reluctant to, would you feel more inclined to not serve eggs at the inn if you were able to show people a medical or a health reason why it might be bad for them in addition to ethical reasons that you've been talking about? Like, for instance, we know that when we cook animal products, anytime an animal product gets browned on the grill, you're producing heterocyclic amines, which are known carcinogens and they're known to cause cancer. Would that be something that would make it easier for you to possibly eliminate that from your menu, or would it be too controversial for your guests?
Cooking eggs produces a carcinogen,
Right. Well, first of all, I don't believe that. Be real honest. I think that consciously you can undo the carcinogens in the eggs. I mean, I really do. I think it's how your head works. And becoming more and more aware of how your head works, you're not going to eat the eggs anyway. Secondly, the only real argument to me is the fact that not one male chicken, except for those used for sperm, makes it out of a hatchery. That's the real reason, and that would be the reason that I would talk to him. I'd talk about the utter cruelty, even in a relatively green, truly free range, where our eggs come from, their chickens are all wandering around, but they still are killing the males. So it doesn't work. So we're undertaking, Dana, the head of our gardening and really the assistant manager, is undertaking to then the retired hens all get killed. So we're going to start getting the eggs closer in, and then we're going to take the hens when they're retired, and we're going to keep them and feed them until they die. That is our newest project. We're going to take retirement hens, but I would less as soon not have anything to do with chickens. And then I thought about if I had the land, I would have a rooster colony, and a chicken and a hen colony and just let them, do their thing, live, and then but keep the roosters. I wouldn't off the roosters.
You
Yes.
can encourage the guests to interact with the animals, and it might change their perspective on the whole issue as well.
Yeah, I think that would work, except the best friend serves meat.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I think they do, yeah. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, that people don't put the two together. And there's a real thing about doing it. But you know what? Having the eggs, perhaps, on the menu and charging $2 or whatever it is that we charge extra, I don't remember, that might make people conscious of their choice. And that's really what we got to do, is get them to be conscious of their choice. And then if they want to eliminate the conflict between what they know isn't right in their heart, the death of these birds, and frankly trying to deliver those eggs, that's what the blood about is in yolks. I mean, it might change them.
Do you know the percent of or do you maybe you have any idea of people, guests that come to your inn, what percent are vegetarian or vegan, and specifically chose to go to your inn because they were searching for a vegan or a conscious place as far as diet, or is it just random people in the come to your inn? Do you even know the different? Is there some sort of tracking that you have of that or anything like that?
We do have tracking. Now,
percent, maybe 30% are vegan,
no, it's around 2%. It's very, very small, and it's about the restaurant. What we do, how we track that is we ask them how they found about us, or we can also see how many people are through web tracking are coming through the Ravens, and so we can make some assumptions there. It's very, very small numbers. We do get a lot of people coming to the restaurant that have found us on Happy Cow or one of those websites, and we'll ask them, but my staff's not real good about asking, but there are a lot of people that actually are staying up here or staying someplace else, and they'll come into the restaurant because it's vegan or vegetarian.
And then you have a message that you share with people that aren't there as far as consciousness, this is what and is it in all your literature or something?
Right, it's actually on our website. It's in this thing that I'm going to give you that every guest gets, and it's actually in our brochure, which I didn't think to bring. But there is, it's about we call it conscious tourism, and just to get people involved with it. And then in here we talk about being on a vacation to allow you to quit spinning your world, to use the term from Castaneda, but you stop spinning the world so that you have that opportunity to see how you feel about things. A lot of people don't have time to think about their food. They're busy working and taking their kids to soccer and, whatever it is. The lives are very apart. I mean, down in the Bay Area, you meet somebody and they go to church in the East Bay because that's where they grew up, but they work in San Francisco and they live on the peninsula. They're spread all over the place. And then they got kids that are going to different kinds of practice. They don't have time to think about it. Vacation's the time for people to think about it. So and Joan and I know that, and we go, wow, we're going to do a newsletter. We started this years ago, and we're going to give them an opportunity to realize they have a chance to experience things differently. And we've gotten very small numbers, but it's always rewarding. We've got letters, and I've changed. And it's made a huge impact on my life or my family's life. And we get those, yeah.
I was just going to also remind you that also your book center that you have inside in the lobby there, that makes a big impression too on people that come through. That's another way that you're speaking to them. I mean, when we went there last year, and I don't think I even knew you guys were vegan at the time. And just walking through your book area, there's that one book, especially that one with the little deer on it and the face on your plate.
It's a chicken, I think.
Oh,
That's a chicken, yes.
Well, that's another way that you're speaking to people. I don't think anybody...
She stays with us, by the way, yeah. That's absolutely true. People pick up on that, and it really is wonderful to see somebody write down the titles, and they're going to go order them on Amazon. I'm fine with that. We are about changing life in this, at least in our area, to some degree. And the more that they, steal an idea from us, the better. They can have all the ideas. We give out all recipes freely. Our signature sea palm strudel, you want the recipe, I don't know if it's online, I'll put it online, but it's easy to get. We'll always email it to people. We are happy to give away the recipes. If they want to serve it In New York, they want to serve it. Here at the bistro, let them serve it. You know, the idea is to get people to change and to make it easier for them to change and to make it accessible. I'll tell you, we're starting a vegan school. We're going to be working with Sherry and Dan. We're going to start it down there. We're going to do hot. And then we'll figure out a way to trade students around for those of theirs that want hot and cool, you know, and the raw here. We don't want to intrude on their territory, and we're going to call the whole thing, one umbrella under Mendocino Culinary Arts. The idea is to make it easy and accessible, so people aren't feeling they got to eat salads and baked potatoes or go to Subway when they're on the road, so that there's more people that are out there that do it. There is no vegan school except Joanne Saltzman, if she's still doing it, in Boulder. There's no vegan school in this country. That's how, I mean, we are pathetic. It's very pathetic. So we're trying to do everything that we can, and I have a great staff behind us, and we've got a new person coming in that'll help, and Barry will be there, and a guy named Christopher Sabiensky, who's doing a raw dessert today. Any other questions? I'm happy to ask. Look at me walk my time. I'm happy to answer them. But this is so much better, a dialogue. Does anybody have any comments about anything that we said?
That breakfast scramble that your chef fixed this morning, that was out of sight.
Yeah, it's really good. Thank you.
Really good. That was excellent.
Trouble with it is, since it's got a lot of sunflower and almonds in it, it's very filling. You eat that and you're good for most of the day. And I like to eat food. You can tell. Yeah, it's an awesome breakfast. Any other questions or comments?
How long have you owned vegan?
For 29 years. It was a motel when we bought it, and they had just redone it, and they had furniture bolted to the wall and all that. The first thing we did is unbolt the furniture and unbolt the lamps from the table so that people didn't think we thought they would steal those terrible lamps. So we unbolted it and took it all, and then ordered furniture. We had some friends. We didn't have any money, so we had some friends that lent us some money to buy furniture for that. And the former owners, I'll tell you the story because it's a fantastic story. I was in partnership with my dad, and by the way, who got me into all this stuff. So my dad wasn't a bad guy, except he got hooked on drugs, went kind of nuts. And so the partnership fell apart, and we were doing a hotel with him, a little tiny inn, 9-room, 10-room inn in Carmel. So we left, and we had nothing. We had no money at all. But we had Joan's parents that had seen what we could do. And Joan and I had gotten on the crest of the wave of the bed and breakfast thing. That was in 1975. So by 1980, we were kind of famous in this world. And it was never anything I intended to do. It's just there weren't any jobs in anthropology. Anyway, so I got stuck in it. And so we found this place, and Joan's parents loaned us and then eventually gifted us the part of the down payment. The former owners were looking for somebody that was going to raise a family there, because that's how they had bought it many years before. So Joan was pregnant with our first child, and so they said, we'll loan you the down payment, a good hunk of the down payment. So Art and Catherine Williams loaned us the down payment, a good part of the down payments, and we made it work. That's why we've always been a little skinny. So it was the right place to be in the right time. So we've been there since 1980. It's 29 years on September 15th. And they're wonderful people. One has since died. And it's one of the articles in here because she got rheumatoid arthritis, and she was being treated with 2 infusions, like Remicade, and they make you unable to fend off fungal infections. And she got histoplasmosis, which starts in the lungs, went through her body and killed her. And your immune system can't fight it. And I said, God, there's got to be a way to deal with rheumatoid arthritis with diet. And I learned a huge amount. I started doing a ton of research then. Yes, there is a way to do it. Get rid of all dairy, get rid of all animal products, and go green. And vegan raw is extremely effective, but it was too late for her. Anyway, and I can't get her son, who's my best friend now, to be vegetarian, let alone vegan. And he saw what had happened to his wife. I mean, his mom. That's a Freudian one.
You say he is not interested in being vegan?
I don't know how uninterested he is. I haven't been able to convince him. Anyway, He doesn't live here anymore. His wife's a tenured teacher in Roseville, and they live in Lodi. Any other questions? Well, great. Well, thank you for joining me here today. And for all of you, I think I have more. So does anybody want any of these?
Yeah.
Okay.